Hello there, kia ora. Is there any evidence of the claim that Winston Peters might be racist and he and his party are race baiting, as claimed in the House this week by Chris Hipkins?
And so my challenge to the National Party is absolutely clear in election year. What are they going to do to combat and challenge that racism that we are already seeing in this year's election campaign? Because it is totally unacceptable, and it is totally unacceptable for those who are leading our country to say nothing and do nothing whilst ministers in their own government are doing that to the people of New Zealand.
I mean, the short answer is yes. Lots. Sorry, did you want me to go into detail? All right, I can do that. Just this week alone, we saw him in the House claiming that a Pacifica MP who whakapapas Māori shouldn't be allowed to use the word Aotearoa. You know, the Te Reo name for the country, the one that shows up on our passport, and therefore one that's legally accepted in official use as an official language of the country, which Winston has been repeatedly warned about, but keeps complaining about it anyway without actual ramifications for him, but others do seem to get punished for pointing that out. I mean, remember that next time someone tries to scaremonger you that a left-leaning government means a minor party being able to wag the dog, because it's obvious that that's happening here, and National's leadership are too impotent to stand up to him. Anyway, Winston made the claim that a New Zealand-born MP of Pacifica and Māori heritage shouldn't be allowed to use the word Aotearoa in Parliament in a recent sundown moment. Last week, his deputy Shane Jones was on Radio New Zealand making racist comments about Asians. Again, this past month, he's been using the spectre of Indian migration to justify his opposition to the proposed India Fair Trade Deal. There may be valid concerns about trade imbalance and wage suppression and economic investment, but the race card is what he pulls out to oppose it. Last year, he called Rawiri Waititi's Mataora scribbles in an effort to diminish cultural expression. He made xenophobic Trumpian calls to send a Mexican-born MP home, along with Shane Jones, which led to some minor diplomatic fallout, because our Foreign Affairs Minister keeps saying things like this. In 2024, he claimed in his State of the Nation speech that Labour's co-governance policy was the same as Nazi Germany's policies around race. In 2023, his candidates all over the country in the general election spouted openly racist anti-Māori rhetoric, which he refused to condemn, and in some cases seemed to endorse. He deliberately attacked the use of Te Reo Māori in government departments and in other official uses. In 2017, he called the New Zealand Herald reporters propagandists for Asian immigrants for reporting on work visas. In 2013, his MPs were calling for Muslim bans and using racist derogatory terms to define that group of people. In 2002, he made a speech scaremongering about an Asian invasion, using language regarding refugee scams and ethnic engineering to claim that the country was being invaded by stealth and the dominant white culture was being replaced. In 1996, he targeted what he called non-traditional immigrants, claiming that the country was becoming an Asian colony that would terraform the cultural identity of the country to something unrecognizable. And in the 80s and 90s, he actively campaigned to get rid of the Department of Māori Affairs. He's been in 18 general elections, and he uses well-known qualifiers that he used to justify racist dog whistles that he uses to justify his comments, something known as the distraction defense, where he claims media focus on the tone to avoid the content behind the tone. And the man who has spent more time in Parliament over 5 decades than anyone else often claims that it's the Wellington elites that are trying to silence him as he says what ordinary Kiwis are really thinking. Which is a weird way of saying people calling him racist are right, but because the people saying it aren't the people who vote for him, and they say racist things according to him, it should all be okay. But he has a very long history of scapegoating migrants, where he blames immigration for infrastructure and economic issues, cultural diminishment, where he derides tikanga Māori as separatist and woke, and using inflammatory analogies using historical comparisons to frame administrative policies as racist themselves. And people who vote for his party generally know this and keep voting for him. They hear the dog whistles loudly. And in an election year, he turns those whistles up to 11 because real policy options and effective change don't drive people to vote for you out of anger at a perceived imbalance that you keep telling them exists when all of the data shows that it doesn't. And when that's been your campaign strategy for half a century, well, change can be really hard. But those real policies and outcomes are where voters need to focus their efforts this year if they're dealing with New Zealand First candidates who are spouting racist bullshit. Find out what the outcomes will be from the actions being proposed. After all, the party faithful are happy to say that they'll bury Māori, but they don't seem so happy to discuss the negatives of what the party has achieved. They don't like to mention the 140 failed Provisional Growth Fund projects that they demanded as part of the 2017 coalition agreement that wasted hundreds of millions of dollars. The diplomatic fallout from his rhetoric never gets mentioned by his candidates. Peters blocking a CGT and a more ambitious climate change legislation in 2017 added to an overcooked housing market and could have been an exacerbating factor in this week's storms where resilience measures clearly needed to be more impactful. His gold card has been claimed to be diverting funding from critical areas like youth mental health or primary education and contributing to generational wealth gaps. And his framing of co-governance or Māori-targeted health initiatives have been seen as creating a more hostile climate for minorities, since there is a direct correlation between his rhetoric and public hostility towards migrant communities that he targets. Modern Winston and New Zealand First can actually be summed up by pointing out that as far as he's concerned, being called racist for doing and saying racist things in Parliament and outside of it is pearl-clutching virtue signalling, but forcing the introduction of a bill to make English, the already prominent de facto official language of the country under common law, an official protected language, is not signalling his virtues in a racist dog whistle so loud it's causing avalanches in white supremacist-filled conspiracy-fueled circles. So this year, why don't we help the old man known for yelling at clouds to spend more time at his house, fishing, enjoying his whiskey, smoking his cigars, and not being involved in politics by not voting for him and his race-baiting party the conspiracy theorists all seem enamored with. Because the more people who vote for other political parties, the less influence that he has in this parliament if he breaks that threshold. Oh, hey there, podcast listeners. Thanks for checking out today's podcast, whether that's on video or audio. I really appreciate it. And I did finally get around to doing a podcast end tag, which I've been meaning to do for a while instead of just taking you onto the Facebook version. So while you're here, why not hit that subscribe button so that you can get updates coming in directly every time there's a new episode uploaded. Just seems like a really simple way to keep up to date with all of the crazy that's going on. So yeah, give that a shot and I'll talk to you soon.